My name is Ramesh Thakur. I've worked at the Rajbari Forest Reserve in India for over 22 years. In all this time, I've watched the forest change, slowly, painfully, like a patient recovering from a long illness. And this year, I saw something I never thought I'd see again, the return of the leopard. It all began with a camera trap photo. Let me take you back a little. Rajbari is part of the eastern Himalayan foothills, in the state of Tripura. Decades ago, this region was lush, alive with sound, macaques screeching from the treetops, hornbills flapping noisily overhead, the distant rumble of elephants passing through sal and bamboo thickets. And, though rarely seen, we always knew the forest had its true master, the Indian leopard, Panthera pardus fusca. There were stories, sightings from old villagers, and even an instance in the 80s when a forest guard caught a fleeting glimpse of one slinking away into the undergrowth. But then came the years of silence. In the 90s, illegal logging, expanding agriculture, and unchecked poaching ripped through the landscape. The forest thinned. Roads crept in like scars, breaking up the ecosystem. Human settlements inched closer. Slowly, the leopard disappeared, not just from the forest, but from people's minds. When we walked our patrolling routes, we no longer watched for pug marks. No more warning calls from langurs. Just silence. By the early 2000s, the leopard was officially listed as locally extinct in Rajbari. The older guards still spoke of it in whispers, but to the newer staff, it was like a myth, part of the forest's forgotten past. But the forest has a way of healing, if you let it. In 2008, a new conservation initiative was launched by the State Forest Department in collaboration with the Wildlife Institute of India and local NGOs. The goal was ambitious: reforest degraded patches, curb illegal activities, and reconnect broken wildlife corridors. At first, it seemed like another short-term scheme. But this time, something was different. People from the nearby villages were involved directly. They were hired as forest watchers, trained in nursery care, given alternative livelihoods so they wouldn't have to depend on forest extraction. And so, slowly, the saplings went in. I remember planting sal and gamhar in hard soil, sweating under the sun, wondering if any of it would take root. But they did. Over the years, small green patches turned into thick groves. Streams that had dried up started flowing again during monsoons. The birds came back. So did the monkeys. And the herbivores, barking deer, wild boar, began to appear more frequently on our camera traps. By 2018, we were hopeful. The forest was no longer broken. And yet, never a sign of the leopard. Every few months, we set and checked our camera traps, part of the monitoring protocol. Mostly, we got civets, porcupines, wild dogs. Once a clouded leopard far to the north. But never the Panthera pardus. And so, we continued, though our hope dimmed quietly. Then, in February 2024, it happened. I remember the day so vividly. I was reviewing memory cards from a cluster of camera traps placed near the Kalakara Ridge. This area had always intrigued me. It was one of the oldest reforested zones, thick with undergrowth and bisected by a seasonal stream. The prey base had been growing there. A good place for a predator. I clicked through the images, more wild boar, more muntjac. And then, at 2:43 a.m., the unmistakable silhouette appeared on the screen. My breath caught. It wasn't a dog or a civet or any of the usual suspects. The tail was too long, the shoulder too muscular, the gait too fluid. The flash had caught its eyes, reflecting bright, glowing gold. It was looking directly into the camera. A leopard. I stared at the photo for several minutes before I could even speak. Then I called in my colleague, Nirmal, and we zoomed in. Every detail confirmed it. The rosettes were faint but visible on its flank. Its body looked lean, suggesting a younger adult, maybe 3 or 4 years old. And the fact that it had passed right in front of the trap meant it wasn't just wandering, it was patrolling. This was territory. We didn't speak for a while. Then Nirmal whispered, "It's back." That was the start of a whirlwind week. The forest department was notified. Wildlife biologists from Agartala came down. We shifted our camera grid to the ridge zone, expanded the area, and over the next few nights, we caught the leopard again, twice. One image showed its scent marking a tree. Another showed it dragging a freshly killed barking deer off the trail. All the signs pointed to what we dared not say out loud: the leopard wasn't just passing through. It had come back to stay. Word spread through the reserve. Among the guards and watchers, there was something like reverence in the air. Villagers nearby, especially the elders, were stunned. My grandfather used to talk of the cheetah bog, one of them said. I thought those days were over. But we had to be cautious. A leopard returning after decades is both a triumph and a challenge. Would it come into conflict with livestock? Would it stay hidden? Was it a male, or were there others? The questions multiplied, but in my heart, I felt something deep stir, something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. In the weeks that followed, the leopard became our focus. We coordinated with biologists to study its movements, setting up a grid of 20 traps across a 30-square-kilometer area. We increased night patrols to watch for signs, scrapes, scat, tracks. We collected samples for DNA analysis, hoping to learn where it had come from. Then, one day, we found the pug marks. Fresh, clear, moving along the same trail as in the camera trap photo. The tracks curved down to a waterhole, recently restored, and disappeared into the bamboo. It was as if the leopard was showing us, deliberately, that it knew this forest. That it belonged. By now, media outlets had caught wind of the sighting. Conservationists from across the country reached out. Was this an isolated return, or a sign of recolonization? The questions kept coming, but for those of us on the ground, the meaning was more immediate, more personal. We had spent years planting trees, hauling water, clearing invasive species, chasing away poachers. We had watched animals return, one by one. And now, finally, the top predator, the keystone, had returned. It felt like the forest had drawn a breath after a long silence. After that first sighting of the leopard on the Kalakara Ridge camera trap, everything changed. In the days that followed, we combed the area with more purpose than ever. There was an electricity in the air, among the guards, the biologists, even the villagers. You could feel it in the early morning mist, in the way the jungle seemed to hold its breath. The leopard had returned, yes. But something in our instincts said, this wasn't the whole story. And we were right. 2 weeks after the initial image, on a damp, overcast morning in early March, I was reviewing another set of images from a southern cluster of cameras. One particular trap, set near an abandoned salt lick that we had restored, had captured movement at 3:12 a.m. The leopard again. But this time, something was different. She was smaller, finer featured, more delicate. The spot pattern around her shoulders was different. And there was a notch in her left ear, an old injury, likely from a territorial fight or an encounter with a porcupine. This was not the same animal as the one from Kalakara Ridge. We now had evidence of at least 2 leopards, a male and a female. I won't lie, I sat back in my chair and stared at the image for nearly a minute. This changed everything. We gathered the rest of the team and compared side-by-side images. Nirmal ran the IDs through the pattern recognition software we had access to via the Wildlife Institute. It confirmed what we already knew in our bones: 2 individuals, one of them female. It was no longer just a return. It was a revival. In the coming weeks, the puzzle slowly came together. The female, who we began calling Nira, after the Bengali word for silent, because of the stealth with which she moved, began showing up frequently in the southern parts of the reserve. The male, larger and more robust, mostly stayed along the central ridge corridor. Their paths occasionally overlapped. Once, both appeared on the same camera just 20 minutes apart. Then, in April, we found fresh signs of a kill, a half-eaten wild pig carcass. Scat nearby suggested the female had fed there. A few days later, pug marks and disturbed undergrowth near a dense bamboo grove pointed to possible denning behavior. That's when the biologist said what we were all thinking: she might be pregnant. The forest department responded swiftly. They temporarily restricted movement in that part of the reserve, especially during patrols. No human activity beyond a designated buffer zone. It was a delicate balance. We couldn't abandon protection efforts, but we also couldn't risk disturbing her. Meanwhile, villagers in the periphery were informed and sensitized. Workshops were held to talk about safety, livestock protection, and compensation protocols. Surprisingly, there was little resistance. The people here, who had once suffered due to wildlife depredation, now saw the leopard as a symbol. a sign that their forests were healing. Many elders spoke of the old times again, of when a leopard's call echoed across the ridges in the early morning, and how that sound meant the forest was alive. One man, Mohan Debnath, told me, "This is not just your leopard, Babu. This is ours too." I think that's when I knew, this time, the leopard had a chance to stay. In May, we recorded a moment that still gives me goosebumps. At 4:16 a.m., a camera trap near the den site captured the female walking along the trail. But she wasn't alone. Behind her, two tiny shapes followed, wobbly, curious, no bigger than house cats. Leopard cubs. The photo is grainy, but you can clearly see them. One is almost hidden behind the mother's tail. The other is a step ahead, eyes wide, testing the ground beneath its paws. Mira is turned toward them, mid-step, as if she's checking to see if they're keeping up. I called the department head that morning and didn't bother hiding my emotion. "They're here," I said. "She has cubs." There was a long silence on the line. Then he said quietly, "We'll do everything to protect them." And we did. That summer was all about safeguarding the new family. We created a soft buffer around the denning area. Signs were posted, and even forest staff entered only when absolutely necessary. We doubled the night patrols. The forest watchers, many of whom were from nearby villages, took on the role with fierce pride. Not a single incident of poaching was reported that year. By August, the cubs, still unseen by human eyes, began to venture out more, triggering cameras farther from the den. Their gait was more confident. The male was captured again on a camera near the northern edge. Whether he was the father, we couldn't be certain, but he remained within the general range, reinforcing the idea that this territory was becoming stable habitat again. And the forest itself seemed to change in response. You must understand, leopards don't just exist in a forest. They shape it. Their presence alters prey movement, affects scavenger behavior, shifts the hierarchy. With a predator back, even the forest was finding its balance. The sambar deer returned to the far slopes. We began spotting crested serpent eagles more frequently, likely drawn by the increased activity around kill sites. The forest became, once again, a living, breathing system, not just a patch of green, but an ecosystem. In September, a team of visiting ecologists conducted a biodiversity assessment. Their preliminary findings were astonishing. The forest cover had increased by 23% over the last decade. More importantly, the reserve was now connected to a broader corridor that linked it to other patches of protected forest all the way to the Trishna Wildlife Sanctuary. That was likely how the leopards had returned. They had followed the green thread, invisible to human eyes, but ancient and instinctive to animals. The corridor worked. By December, the cubs were nearly a year old. We captured them on video, still tentative, but bold enough to sniff the camera casing before trotting off. The mother, never far behind, watched them with quiet vigilance. As I watched that footage, I realized what this all meant. It wasn't just about one leopard. It was about every sapling planted, every illegal snare removed, every night spent on patrol, every conversation we'd had with the community. It was about patience and belief. And in the end, it was about resilience, of the forest, of the animals, of people like us who never stopped hoping, even when the cameras turned up nothing for years. Today, Rajbari Forest Reserve is still quiet. The leopard doesn't roar like the tiger. It doesn't draw crowds. It moves like a ghost, silent, unseen by most. But its presence is undeniable. Every time I check the traps and see those golden eyes flash in the dark, I remember that morning in February. And I smile, because the silent one is no longer gone. It is home.